My name is Erica Oriens, and I'm the Vice President of the Michigan Community College Association. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on addressing the enrollment crisis at Michigan Community Colleges. I see from the chat and from my review this morning that a lot of you are working from home today. So thanks for joining, even though I know many of you are managing all kinds of stuff on your campus as well. And I know that we probably have, at least I do, and some of my colleagues have lots of happy children who are home on a snow day who are joining us for our webinar today too. So we're always open to see cute little smiling faces on our webinars too. So thanks for those of you who are juggling a lot here today. It looks like we have close to 200 folks who have already joined. We had over 300 people registered. And we have assembled an agenda today that we are hoping will speak to a lot of you across campus and center some data around recent college enrollment data that was released by the Center for Educational Performance and Information last month. Our colleagues from the Michigan College Access Network came together to focus on some very strategic and targeted college access resources. My colleagues Jenny Schenker, Precious Miller, and I will be talking about student success resources and retention resources from our work. And then our colleagues at the Office of 60 by 30 will be talking about some financial aid resources and some of the programs that they operate that will be able to support student enrollment and retention. For those of you who were not able to join us in person, we are recording this event, and the recording, slides, and other resources will be available on the MCCA events page. If you go to mcca.org, click on events, the very first event today will be this webinar, and I have already posted the slides there for those of you who would prefer to or need to see them on your screen in another format or would prefer to walk through them on your own. So feel free to access those there as well. So I think that's enough with the administrivia for today. So I'd like to turn it over to the president of the Michigan Community College Association, Brandy Johnson, to give her welcome. Brandy?
My daughter just said, "That's you." Hi everyone, I'm Brandy Johnson, also on a snow day with a 7-year-old and 5-year-old in the background. So appreciate your grace. But I really appreciate your participation in this event. I don't know if we've ever had a webinar that had that much registration in such a short period of time. And I think that really speaks to the agreement and sort of the reckoning we are all dealing with, that this is indeed a crisis. We use that word deliberately, and we think that the data that you will see will confirm that it is indeed a crisis. It's a crisis for our students, especially our younger students, traditional age students that are recent high school graduates or about to be a recent high school graduate who had their lives and their education so disrupted by the pandemic. We know that even in a world in which they have are working right now, maybe for slightly inflated wages for an entry-level job, that is not a recipe for a lifetime of prosperity. It's a crisis for our employers that are very consistently talking about the talent gap and naming workforce development and workforce issues as their #1 barrier to success. It's a crisis for our state's economy. We know that the only way that Michigan will be able to continue to be more and more recession proof and have low unemployment rates and high per capita income is by improving our post-secondary educational attainment rate. And we know it's certainly a crisis for our colleges. Not every college, but a lot of colleges won't be able to financially survive if we don't address this enrollment crisis head on. As Erica said, what you'll hear today are are really no new announcements. What you'll hear today are current programs and resources and assets from both within the association and through our partners that haven't been fully leveraged to their full extent. So what we hope to do is draw some attention to existing strategies to boost enrollment that you can start leveraging today. So thank you to our friends at the Michigan College Access Network and at the Office of 60 by 30. If you know me at all, you know that college access and success is my heart and my soul and my DNA. And so it's a real honor to be working with both of these organizations, as I had the privilege and honor to kind of stand up both programs. Special thanks to Erica for kind of the minute she saw the newly released CEPI data, she came to me and said, Brandy, we gotta talk about this. We gotta put together some information and some resources, and that is leadership. So really thankful to Erica for her leadership. So I will turn it back over to Erica. Again, thank you so much for investing your time and energy into today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Great introduction, and thanks to everybody who's putting your name and institution in the chat. It's great to see all of you here, and well, that's helpful for us to record who's here as well. So I'd like to get started with our first section of the presentation today, and we'd like to do a data overview of exactly the issue and the crisis that we're really talking about today. Back in just about a month ago in January, the Center for Educational Performance and Information released data for the class of 2022 and their college enrollment by high school and where they went to college. This data has been released in the winter timeframe for about the last 10 years. So we anticipated it coming out, but of course it's always new to us when we see those numbers. I'd like to today cover with you 3 crucial data points before we start talking about solutions, just so we're on the same page about the data that we're talking about here. That is college enrollment by high school, so the extent to which high school students are enrolling in college enrollment destination, so where do those students go after they graduate from high school? And I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about enrollment in community college to center maybe some of the enrollment declines that you've seen at your institution before I turn it over to our partners on this call as well today. First, starting with college enrollment by high school. The Center for Educational Performance and Information has data on every high school graduate in the state of Michigan. And in Michigan, we are hovering right now and have been for the last several years, right around 100,000 high school graduates. And back in 2012, 2013, 65.8% of those students enrolled in college, in any college, community college, university, in-state or out of state. 65.8% of those students enrolled in college within 6 months of high school graduation. That dropped about 3.8% in 2017, 2018 to 62.5%. And then this year with the class of 2022, that dropped down to 52.8%. So this is the crisis we're really talking about here, is just over 52% of students, or just over 50% of students who graduated from high school in Michigan enrolled in college if they graduated last fall or last year. So that doesn't tell the whole story. And so what I'd like to do is show you how that breaks down by the many subgroups that CEPI tracks among high school graduates here. And I'd like to start with enrollment by race or ethnicity. I've included here the breakdowns of enrollment by race and ethnicity. You can see the total statewide average there, which is 52.8%. And we can see that for all race and ethnicities, with the exception of Asian students and white students, the college enrollment rate is lower than the statewide average. So we're seeing significant gaps by race and ethnicity in the data. As I mentioned, these slides are available to you on the MCCA website, and you'll notice that I have left a column blank here in the last column here, because I'm showing you today data that is statewide, but you can get this information by ISD, by district, or by individual high school. So I've left this in PowerPoint, and I've also left you a column there. So this is ready to go for you to take a look at this data for your local ISDs, districts, and high schools in the area. We also see enrollment by gender. Again, we're displaying total enrollment, and we see more female students enrolled in college than male students. So only 46.6% of male students enrolled in college within 6 months of graduation. The CEPI also tracks several other subgroups, and we can see here that students that are identified as economically disadvantaged, and which is, I think, among other things, measured by students who are on the free and reduced price lunch program, just 36.9% of those students enrolled. Among English learners, only 40% of those students enrolled in college. Under students experiencing homelessness, 29%. And students with disabilities, just 22.9%. And so we see all of those subgroups are even lower than the statewide average. We also know that these are growing populations in the state of Michigan and among a shrinking high school student population. And so the other thing that I think is important to remember is that at community colleges, in many cases, these are the subgroups of students that we really want to serve better. And a lot of the work that you've been doing is really targeted at students that identify in these subgroups. I'd like to move on to some data on college enrollment destination. So what I'm sharing with you here is, where do students go? Where do students go to college? So that 100,000 high school graduates that we have in Michigan, these are the top 10 institutions where those students go in the state. So Michigan State University enrolls 5% or 5,786 high school graduates. U of M Ann Arbor enrolls 3,000 of Michigan's high school graduates, and then we continue down here. The wonderful thing about this report is that you can see this again for your selected ISD district or high school. So if you want to know what institutions students are choosing, or of course not choosing any institution at all, you're able to find this in the college enrollment destination. I've included this slide in here because I'm strongly encouraging colleges to go out there on the CEPI website and select your feeder high schools, the ISDs, districts, and high schools that you work with most, and get this very detailed data, not only about the demographics of all students who enroll in college, but also where those students enroll. The last data point that I want to touch on is enrollment in community colleges. I know that many community colleges in Michigan have experienced an enrollment decline between 2020 and 2023 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and other factors. But we also know that community colleges have experienced an enrollment decline over the last 10 years as well. This isn't something that's brand new. We've seen this enrollment decline happening for 10 years. I just want to make a special note on this slide that I recognize that 2012, 2013 was a record-breaking year of enrollment in community colleges. We were in the middle of the Great Recession. Unemployment was, close to 20% in Michigan, and we saw a record number of students enrolled. But still, just 5 years ago in 2017, 2018, there were 23,715 high school graduates enrolled in Michigan community colleges. And among the graduating class of 2021, 2022, we see that we're down to 15,961 students. So we can see that some of our enrollment decline is caused by recent high school graduates choosing not to attend community college. I'll also point out, if you do run the numbers, and I know some of our colleagues from IR are on this call, and many of you have noticed that while the total number of students that enrolled in college has declined, community colleges in Michigan have absorbed the vast majority of that decline. Enrollment at the 15 public universities has remained relatively flat during that same period of time, and community colleges have absorbed a lot of that decline when you look at that class of 2021, 2022. I provided a link here to the My School Data website. The two reports that you'll want to look at are college enrollment by high school and college enrollment destination. And I've included in here the questions that you can ask yourself that data can show you, and what information you'll be able to pull out of there, along with the slide templates that I shared with you that you should be able to also use at your institution. I want to also just give you a little bit of a warning that I personally find the My School Data website challenging to use sometimes. It is, and we work with the Center for Educational Performance and Information a lot. They do really great work, but the view that we want to have as community college administrators, faculty, and leaders is slightly different than what the public would necessarily want to see. So there's a lot of stakeholders that go out to the CEPI, to the My School Data dashboards. Because of that, we are working with our colleague at the Community College Research Center, John Fink, who has created dashboards using big data from publicly available data sources. We are working with John to create a dashboard that will be much more community college administrator friendly, where you'll be able to pull down the data more easily and be able to make some of those selections around what high school district or ISD you're choosing. You can narrow that data down by all of those subgroups that we described. John is in the process right now of interviewing folks at community colleges to gather information about what their needs are, and we will be releasing those dashboards later this spring. We will make sure that that information gets out to everybody who is on this webinar, so that it'll be a bit easier for you to navigate this data. And then just easier to access links here as well. Now, what I would like to do is transition and welcome our colleagues from the Michigan College Access Network to talk about the resources that they have available to engage and re-engage the class of 2023 and re-engage classes that have been recently graduated. So I'll turn it over to MCAN.
Thanks, Erica. So glad to see so many people here. I'm Ryan Fewens-Bliss. I'm the Executive Director of MCAN. I know a lot of you. Happy to meet the rest of you. Your institutions have been working with MCAN for about 12 years since our inception to do various things. We've given some grants out to you. We've done some other programming with you. So it's really great to see some old friends here. Not old friends, but old friends. I want to give you just a little bit of a snapshot of who MCAN is, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Director, Jamie Jacobs, to talk about some specific programs. If you're not familiar with MCAN, our mission is to increase college readiness, participation, and completion here in Michigan, particularly among three subgroups that we find need extra priority in the state. That's low-income students, first-generation college-going students, and students of color. I don't need to tell you all that, but you serve those students in high populations, which we are incredibly grateful for. Go ahead to the next slide, please. We use these 3 E statements to sort of talk about who we are, so you all know who you're getting into business with. Obviously, we're about education, certificates and degrees specifically. We know that education beyond high school is a necessity in our economy, regardless of what the media says. All of the data shows that over and over and over again. Again, I know you all know that, but lots of people want to argue with us about that. So we want to make it really clear it's not an arguable point. The facts are there. We're obviously about equity. We care about those priority populations. We believe if we close gaps with those priority populations, we'll get to that 60 by 30 goal. Probably in time for us to then set a new goal, because the economy is demanding already more than that 60 by 30. And obviously, or hopefully this is obvious, we're about empowerment. We are in Lansing. I am originally from Northern Michigan, and people from Northern Michigan hate people from Lansing coming to town and telling them how to do their work. We don't do that. We work hand in hand and empower local communities to make their own decisions and provide you with resources and some of the things that you'll hear from my colleague, Jamie. So that's the approach that we take. We are not affiliated with the state of Michigan. We are a 501c3 standalone nonprofit, although we do get some state funds to do some of our work.
Thanks, Ryan. So for those, my name is Jamie Jacobs. I serve as Deputy Director, and I am so thankful for the leadership of Erica and Brandy to be able to be here today with you all. If you have heard us present before, this is going to feel very, very different. That is on purpose. What we're hoping to get to you today is a few ideas, fast, quick, and easy, that you could think about deploying depending on your role within the institution within the next month. So that's what we're hoping to get to you right now. Not typically the way we talk to you. We are a much sort of longer term focused organization, but there's definitely things at your fingertips that we want you all to be thinking about. So the first piece is around FAFSA completion. You're going to hear this from a couple of us today. You all know I don't need to preach to you all the importance and the role, the critical role that FAFSA completion plays on enrollment, especially around our priority population students. What we know this year, though, is that there's more financial aid available to students than ever before. Hopefully you feel incredibly well informed about the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. There's more on that coming in a few minutes. But that means more aid to students, the students who need it the most, but also the vast majority of students having a tuition-free pathway through to a certificate or an associate's degree as we think about your roles. So what that means is we need students who maybe had family members who didn't complete or completed the FAFSA but didn't get aid besides loans should be thinking about filing. So every student, this is every student, right? That's our messaging. It's always been our messaging, but more important now than ever that every student should be filing. What is not great news is Michigan's FAFSA completion rate is it's about on par this year to what it was last year, which is significantly below pre-COVID rates. So that's not good news. Despite the fact that more financial aid is available for more students than ever before, less students are filing. So we need your help. Schools need your help, students need your help, and they especially need help from folks like you because you're experts in this. A lot of times we focus on incenting students and incenting families. While I'm all in on incenting students and families, and there's data that shows it's effective, they also need help. By and large, what they need is help. They need experts that can support them, and a lot of those experts are you. So let's talk about what some of those actions could look like. On the next slide, Erica, if you could move. I'm trying to make this super just like cut and dry for you. Here's 3 thoughts I have for you about some actions you could take in the next short while. You could start today. Think about the schools that are your feeder schools, the schools you hope to be grabbing students from, the high schools in your community, and check out their FAFSA completion rates. These are updated on a weekly basis. They were updated yesterday through February 20th. So these are really up-to-date numbers on the FAFSA completion rates by high school across the entire state. What you won't find there is private high schools. There's data issues, as you can imagine. So this is inclusive of public school academies and traditional public schools. So look at those FAFSA completion rates. It'll blow your mind. Hopefully there's some positive lights in there, but a lot of those numbers are going to look lower than you anticipated and lower than you hope. We're asking that one of the things you could do after that is reach out to these high schools and ask how you can support students. Do they have FAFSA completion nights coming up? Are there a list of students that you could reach out to support? Students and families, could you come in for some evening hours? Could they refer students direct to you on your campuses? Where and when and how could that look? Could you partner to do some virtual support? Folks have become so much more comfortable with virtual support. Could that be an opportunity for you to support? They're desperate for your help. They're desperate for your expertise. This is something that will no doubt translate into enrollments in your institutions. The other piece that I'd love for you to think about is who's applied to your institutions, already applied, but has not yet filed their FAFSA. This is something your admissions offices can help make sure is available. A file that shows here's the students who's applied, here's the students who don't have a FAFSA on file. Now, yes, are all those students currently planning to matriculate? Who knows? But your hope is that they do. But we know it is very unlikely for them to matriculate if they don't file. It seems even more likely in just like an anecdotal spirit that if somebody from a particular college reaches out to me and says, hey, I noticed you haven't filed, I'd love to help you, that I'm going to feel a little bit of connection to that person and that institution who reached out to help me. That can only help you in the long run. So we'd love for you to look at your own data. If it's, one, reach out and partner, two, look at your own data. Where are their gaps? Use that and use the contact information you have from their application to say, hey, I noticed, we'd love to help. How can we help? Here's some options for how we can connect with you or how you can connect with us. So that's our thoughts on FAFSA. Check out the data, reach out to schools, reach within your institutional data systems, and see what you can do to support students. Let's talk for a minute about Decision Day. I'm hoping that Decision Day is not new language to you. This has been around for about a decade nationally. It's referred to nationally as National Signing Day. It's connected to expanding the NCAA Signing Day campaign. That's all super fun, right? Around student athletes who are committing to a particular institution. The effort looks to expand that to lift up students for all post-secondary decisions they're making, regardless if they're signing on to be a student athlete. This has been particularly successful and is a big plays a big role in culture shift and change within institutions. It is national. It's called National Signing Day nationally. MCAN did this work before it was a national sort of staple. So we call this Decision Day in Michigan. Schools around Michigan celebrate this on or around May 1. That date should make a lot of sense to you all, but that's when high schools are celebrating. There are hundreds and hundreds of high schools that celebrate Decision Day across the state, and we think there's an opportunity for you to get in on this. So the action steps related, before I get to the action steps, the next slide will just talk to you a little bit. If you have not yet engaged in a Decision Day, I just wanted you to have a sense of what these tend to look like. Like Ryan said, we give control locally. So we support this initiative across the state, support resources, toolkits to make it happen, but schools decide what makes sense for them. Some communities do a massive community or countywide celebration. Others do social media campaigns, assemblies, bring in guest speakers. It really depends on the community, but every single one of these has an opportunity for you all to engage, and they love your support. So let's talk about those action steps. So the first thing you'll see here is a link to the official host sites for Decision Day. There are about 300 official sites. I will also tell you there are hundreds and hundreds more that are not signed on as official sites. Paperwork is hard. Paperwork takes a lot of effort. If you've engraved this into your structures and systems, you care a lot less about signing up officially with MCAN because you feel good to go. So take a look at that host site list. It also includes the contact information for their host site coordinator and their leadership. So you reach out to them and say, hey, what are your plans? We'd love to be involved and we'd love to help. Perhaps some of you have been involved in the past. You haven't yet heard from your schools, or maybe you were involved pre-COVID. But now that we've moved sort of into this sort of post-COVID space, you haven't been as engaged. Reach out to them and say, hey, what are your plans? How can we help pull this off? Or how can we help be involved? That's my recommendation. Engage with schools, participate, and physically show up. Send your staff, send your teams. Shake hands with the students who say they plan to attend your institutions. That's their plans. It doesn't mean they're going to show. You all know that. But all of these opportunities to make contact with students and to be present are going to matter for students. All of the data shows that that is what students in this generation are looking for. So we think it's important for you to show up for these, both in a social media campaign way. Could you host your own decision day and have students get on a Zoom or come to campus? All sorts of things to think about, but show up to where these events are happening. You could plan some of these events yourself, but be there for students and they'll recognize that and they'll notice. If you have any questions, you see contact information here for our director, Janine Hatum, who runs this strategy. There's just a lot of moving parts as you think about your institute or your high school. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Next, we're going to talk about advisor engagement. So I think some of you are going to be incredibly familiar with the college advising strategy that's been around since 2008, which now feels like a very long time ago. But some of you may not be. And this seems like a real untapped resource that you should think about if you haven't. We have over 100 high schools in the state that have support of a designated college advisor, a designated and dedicated college advisor. This is in addition to Gear Up staff or TRIO partnerships or career navigators they may have through a partnership with the ISD, and in addition to school counselors that school or district may have on staff. These advisors are supported through one of the programs you see here, Advise Michigan, which MCAN leads, the MSU, Michigan State University College Advising Corps, and the University of Michigan College Advising Corps. The advising programs embed highly trained college graduates as advisors in high schools. They work alongside school counselors where they exist to build their capacity and, quite frankly, do that really detailed, time-consuming one-on-one work that's necessary to help students navigate the college-going process. My favorite anecdote is when colleges will show up to volunteer. Some of you may have had this experience for a college application drive, and you'll say, why are we helping students do college applications? They're the easiest things ever. And then you sit in a lab for a day and you realize the types of questions and the hurdles and barriers that students encounter, and things like, I don't know my zip code. Not let alone do they know things like their social security number. They don't know their zip code. They have never filled out a form. They have no idea what it means to be first generation. And turns out when they hit that question, even though you're asking it for scholarship eligibility, they bail on the entire process because they don't feel like they belong. So these advisors help support students through those types of processes where an adult is not physically present to help students and say, here's what it means to be first gen. Also, don't bail. Like, one question that you don't know the answer to isn't a reason to bail. That's what advisors do. They're AmeriCorps members and they're serving a year of service. Some of them serve 2 years of service. So they're around for a short term, but they're incredibly valuable and useful in these schools. And I think they can be incredibly valuable to you as well. On the next slide, you'll see a little bit more about what advisors do. So I talked through a bunch of this already. They do support around FAFSA completion, helping them complete scholarship applications, helping make sure that they physically get on your campuses to go through any testing for placement, all of those pieces that ensure or hope, right, that we are ensuring students end up on your campuses. So what does it look like for you to engage with these folks? So on the next slide, you'll see a link again, and this is where advisors are placed. It's a document that lists the name of the advisor, contact information for the advisor, schools that the advisor serves in across the state, and it's all listed by county. Our hope is that the by county, and I forgot to mention this, the county is included in the decision day host site list as well. The hope is it's the easiest way for you to do some sorting and filtering to find your school. So you don't need to do like a control F through hundreds and hundreds of schools to find your folks. So similarly here, you can search by county and figure out who's around you that's serving as a college advisor. You'll have their contact information right there. And our thought is you should reach out to them. If you don't know those folks, you should know those folks. They should be your best friend. You should be their best friend. How can you be present? Again, you'll see a theme here. Could you show up to help them host a college night? Could you help bring students on campus? Can you support the funds for a bus that gets students on campus for a myriad of activities? Are they doing a college fair? Do they want you present for a rep visit, on-site admissions? How could you be present and be helpful? And these advisors should be your best friends because that is their job, right? Their job job, unlike school counselors, who are also a really good resource to tap. Advisors are 100% full-time, 40 hours a week, dedicated to this conversation. So they've got the capacity to have conversations with you that look different than sometimes school counselors have the capacity to do. Don't forget that you should reach out where you don't have college advisors to the school counselors as well. Even though you say, look, they're tapped, they don't have time, right? One of the reasons we need you to reach out is because they're taxed and they don't have time. They need your help in creative thinking to help them think about how they build their capacity. I think the last thing I have to talk to you about today is our innovative program grants. This feels like the most wildly out of whack to the other sort of more programmatic pieces. So this is really an idea that focuses on capacity building and innovation for you. I feel like this is something that is really untapped by community colleges and really colleges in general that we offer. So we offer funds of up to $10,000. So not a ton of money, but some money that helps any entity. This could be a college, a community-based organization, a nonprofit, a high school, you name it, that's focused on increasing college readiness, enrollment, and completion. We want to know your ideas. We call these innovative program grants for a reason. We want your ideas that are innovative, new ideas to your campus, ideas that are not new to your campus, but you're looking to scale them after having seen some efficacy in a smaller subgroup sampling. Typically, you may need additional funding. We do require some match support in this funding. You'll see that there in the about 5th bullet here. 50% match of the request is required, but you may need more funding on top of that. Maybe you need some flexible funding on top of some restricted funding you already have to implement an innovative idea. We want to be at the table and we want to support you. These are not meant to be renewable. So I mentioned that on the front end. These are meant to spark innovation, spur innovation, help you collect the data to build the case, to scale something, to try something, to test something. That's what we want to create for you. In some ways, a laboratory style environment, if you've got an idea that you would like to test out. Again, all it needs to be is connected to college readiness, enrollment, and completion. And we're all ears to hear about what your thoughts are. You'll see a link there on the bottom to the details about the application. So go there, learn more. That's your action step. Take a look. It's a short web page. There's 4 paragraphs maybe on that page. Skim through them. And if you're thinking you might have an idea that fits in that space, your assignment is to reach out to Chris Rutherford on our team who leads this strategy. His email is there on the screen. You'll also see it in the next slide, I think. But we want to talk through these ideas. We offer this support to folks. Reach out to us and say, hey, here's what we're thinking. Does this seem like a worth our time to apply strategy? And then we'll walk you through that. The other thing I'll say is it's good practice in grant writing. These are relatively simple grant applications in the grand scheme of grant applications. I think I can say that. And it's good practice at going through that process in a much lower stakes environment around ideas that you're probably pretty pumped and excited about, but are also low risk to you if the funding doesn't come through. So reach out to Chris, take a look at the website, reach out to Chris, schedule a call or a Zoom or even an in-person meeting if you want to talk through these ideas. And then the easy thing is apply. It's no risk. Put your application in. I imagine this is a couple hours of a small group of folks' time, and it could be what allows you to implement something you couldn't otherwise implement. So I think that's the last I have. Yes, with just some quick contact information for folks I talked with you about today. The one person I didn't mention that you see 4th there, Jenny McCardle, she leads our department where the Advise Michigan program is housed. Some of you are super familiar with the College Completion Corps because you're hosting our AmeriCorps members on your own campuses. So you may know Jenny incredibly well, but she is also the point of contact for any Advise Michigan related questions or advisor strategy in general. That's what I got.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Great actionable resources and the whole MCAN team for pulling this together for us really quickly. Next, I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues at the Michigan Center for Student Success, and we will get started with Jenny Schenker. Jenny?
Hi, all. Thanks for joining us. I know I see many people on this webinar who will be very familiar with the things that I'm going to talk about, but maybe there are some people who are not. And then I have to say in advance that I realized that I did not put links on my slides. So I might need to drop them into the chat. But I want to talk to you about some of the work that we do at the Michigan Center for Student Success. We are more focused on persistence and retention and completion and successful completion of courses than we are on recruiting in general. But we do have actually a program active right now, and your college, if you're on this webinar, is probably engaged in building an academic catch-up program for summer 2023. This is a program that is funded by a legislative appropriation. It was open to every college, and the majority of colleges in Michigan are working on, building one of these programs. It's targeted to recent high school graduates intended to address learning loss related to COVID disruptions. It's free and open to all new students, whether or not they're going to attend your college or they're going to attend another college, or they don't know yet whether they're going to attend college. This is a recruitment tool for colleges to get to number one, help students build their skills to be more successful in their first semester of college, but also to reach out to those colleges, those 50% of students who might not be planning to go anywhere, and let them know that college is a possibility for them and that they can build their skills and enter further ahead than they might have thought. So the programs include instruction in math and English, developmental level instruction, combined with college knowledge about how to get financial aid, how to register, some study tips and skills. It also includes wraparound supports, including support for transportation, support for food, support for student basic needs, all funded from this legislative appropriation, and available to colleges to distribute to students. And the intention is to prepare students for a successful start to their college experience. And you see that it's focused on math and English instruction. Our colleagues at the Community College Research Center and other entities have found that success in Gateway Math and English in the first year is associated with higher likelihood of completion for students. So that kind of segues into this another thing that I'm sure that all of you are working on your campus, which is transitioning from, nope, not yet, back to that slide, yeah, transitioning from traditional developmental education to co-requisite delivery of math and English, which is mandated for Reconnect students. It's recommended for everyone. It has the potential to close equity gaps. And so you know that this work is going on your campus. If you're not a faculty member designing this work, if you're an admissions counselor, if you're if your job is to recruit students, you can lean into this work to explain to students that this is going to help them get moving more quickly into their programs of study. Now, next slide. And then once they are on your campus, once they do elect to enroll, our friends at the Community College Research Center, again, have created this fantastic framework that they call the ACIP framework, which is designed to improve the onboarding process for students. So this is, once you've recruited the students, how do you get them to be more attached to the college, more attached to continuing their program? That you use this Ask, Connect, Inspire, Plan framework. Many of you, again, on your campuses are creating new onboarding processes, but this is a way for you to be more familiar, to see if you can lean into this. There's a role for everyone at the college. It's based on the principles of guided pathways, which is a work that has been happening at almost all of our colleges to kind of streamline programs of study, make it easier for students to access and progress through these programs. So basically, the Ask, Connect, Inspire plan says, you should ask students about strengths, interests, aspirations, life circumstances, try to better match students with program of study that will work for them. Then once they have identified what they're interested in, connect them with the faculty in that department, with other students study in the same program of study, with local employers who might be looking to hire them after they graduate, with opportunities like internships or job shadowing or things or co-curricular programs on your campus, as well as connect them with community resources who can support them with their basic needs, which Precious, I know we'll talk a little bit more. So that's the other part of Connect. Make sure that students are inspired in their first semester by ensuring that they take a Light the Fire course, a course in their program of study or in a field of interest that's going to inspire their passion for learning. And then also spend time with students developing a full program education plan to illuminate the path to their goals. Again, it's really likely that some versions of all of these are already happening or in development on your campus. So my question that I would put to you, your action step to kind of build off of Jamie's presentation is, are you connected to these activities? Can you contribute? Is there a way you can contribute? If you're a faculty member in a program, are you advising new students? Are you involved in some of these recruiting activities? Are you involved in designing onboarding? And just check it out and see where you might be able to plug in and help with this work.
Thank you, Jenny. It is such a pleasure to see so many people on this call. I just appreciate the passion and dedication to student success. So bravo to everyone on this call today. Thank you, Jenny, for your remarks and sharing on how colleges can prioritize or personalize supports to onboard students. I'm going to spend some time reviewing ways to customize our engagement with students to increase sense of belonging and close those equity gaps, as Jenny mentioned. So when we think about inclusive marketing for our colleges, it's impactful to incorporate campaigns that reflect our diverse world, the diverse world that we're all engaging in. So showcase various demographics to reinforce that students belong on our campuses, students belong in our programs, all types of students belong. When students see themselves in advertisements like your websites, social media, your other ads, and even when we consider college pamphlets, students should see themselves reflected in those materials. I believe that this helps expand mindsets of seeing what's possible. Sometimes students don't come from circumstances or situations where they see people that look like them. So representation absolutely matters. It's also important to think about how you can vary your marketing campaigns based on the needs and the interests of your targeted audience, especially on social media. Also think about your campus representation. Who are you sending out from your campus to talk and connect with students in person? It's helpful to have students see individuals that look like them. Increase representation in those in-person interactions. The next thing I wanted to mention is when we think about inclusive language, it's important that we are intentional and cognizant of avoiding language that can sometimes perpetuate harm or offense towards members of marginalized communities in our communications. So consider your targeted audience and whether they prefer person first or identity first language. According to the Americans with Disabilities Act, in general, it's best to utilize person first and disability second language, but best practice is always going to be asking your audience, knowing your audience when possible. Also work to avoid violent language. In our campaign, sometimes we have the best intentions of trying to rally students around the idea that they can do this, but saying phrases like, take your best shot, to try to arouse confidence can be offensive to some. So instead, you can use language like, let's give it a go, and be more appropriate with our alternative language selections. And then going back to some of the data that Erica shared at the top of our meeting, knowing that 40% of English learners are enrolled on our campus, we have to consider and ensure that we are incorporating multiple means of communicating belonging and what's available to access services for these populations. And that includes ensuring that material is given to them in a language that is comfortable and known to them. Now, with and students who are enrolled who may also have a disability, I believe that number was 22.9%, we need to consider accessible services as a means to avoid the lack of assistance because it could cause a student to discontinue. So to ensure that the process for obtaining accommodations and necessary documentation is reasonable, this is something we should give special attention to. This looks like only requesting what is necessary and required to receive those accommodations. Try not to embed additional barriers or additional steps to receiving accommodations. Only ask for what is absolutely necessary. Lastly, consider how these accessible services are made known to students. How can we make accessible services known to students before they enroll, when they're actually enrolled, and then communicating the quality and usefulness of accessible services. The adjustments shared that I mentioned are some guiding overview ways to make your communications and interactions with students meaningful and impactful. But as we continue to address enrollment, it's important to know that your DEI office and those in your DEI department are crucial to this conversation. DEI should be weaved into all aspects of teaching and learning, but especially when we're talking about enrollment, as they can offer perspectives that we might not have top of mind. And then we can go to the next slide to talk about basic needs and financial security. So as we think about this bucket of resources, we know that students who are financially insecure are at an increased risk for not persisting. So to support these students, we can first access what's available on campus and looking at our campus resources to address their acute needs, such as referring them to the campus food pantry or utilizing emergency aid. Similar to what's available at the Jayhawk Hub, if we're looking at a model, that could be one that you look to at Muskegon Community College, where all the services are in a central location, making it easy and accessible for students to navigate whatever basic need they're looking to navigate at that time. We want this to be convenient for them, not an additional barrier. And so that's addressing the immediate need though, right? So to sustain the student for a longer term and looking at financial stability over time, referring students to the platform called My Bridges, which I know some of you on this call are familiar with this resource. But for those of you who are having a first introduction, I'll put a link in the chat. My Bridges is Michigan's free online platform for all Michiganders who where you can go and apply for state benefits like food assistance, housing, transportation, childcare. They also have funeral assistance for students who may have lost a loved one. They have cash assistance, rent, and utility assistance. And all of those resources, Michiganders can go to My Bridges and apply. These resources can be accessed, but I also encourage members on your campus to become familiar with them. And you can, as yourself, can even go to My Bridges and create a free account to just scroll around, get comfortable with this resource, and share this free resource with students. Another thing that you can do is partner with your faculty to ensure that they are aware of this resource, but also financial aid and advising offices. Financial aid personnel can send targeted messaging to students. I know there was a Dear Colleague letter that was sent out about using targeted messaging to connect students to state and public benefits and community resources. And for advisors who may be on this call or whom you have in your sphere of influence, advisors can become familiar with My Bridges and sit down with students and walk them through creating a free account and applying for those benefits in real time. In these approaches, it's also important to send follow-up messaging to students to ensure that they receive the support that they need, or perhaps they just needed an additional prompting or reminder to say, you know what, I'm in your corner. I want to support you in this. Let's walk through this process together. My Bridges also has the capacity for community colleges to become what is called a My Bridges partner. And there's different levels of partnership. The level of partnership that I wanted to highlight is called a navigation partner. As a navigation partner, you can see the details of a student's case with the student's permission as they are applying for benefits. You as a navigation partner can see what benefits they've applied for. And if a student is no longer in your presence, but you notice a community resource that you want to refer to them, you can do that as a navigation partner in your as your role. You can connect them to a community-based organization, whether that student is in your presence or not. Another great thing about being a navigation partner is it's a great way to attract students to your campus. So community-based organizations, or just any person in Michigan who has an interest in growing in their academics, enrolling in a college at your institution, they can self-select for a community college person as a navigation partner to connect with them. So that's another way to build attraction to your campus. If you have questions or are interested in becoming a navigation partner, please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to schedule a one-on-one call and walk you through that process. It would be an absolute pleasure to support you in that way. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me as well. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Erica.
Great, thank you so much, Precious. The next strategy that I want to share is a little bit different than what we've talked about with the most recent high school graduates, but well, or this year's high school graduates, but I'm thinking about recent high school graduates as well. We know that part of the enrollment crisis has been caused by students who've enrolled at your college and then have subsequently left. They haven't persisted in their program of study, and they probably have left your institution. And the data that we have suggests that over half of those students don't go anywhere else. So they're not enrolled at another college or university. They're just not enrolled at all. Many of you have been involved in what we refer to as re-engagement strategies, things like credit when it's due or degrees when due, where what you're doing is you're going into your student data system, you're mining the data system for students who have been enrolled in the last 5 years or so. You're seeing if they're enrolled anywhere else, and then you're doing that targeted outreach to those students. So I'm sharing with you, and we have some links on the next couple of slides, but I'm sharing with you a really good playbook from the Institute for Higher Education Policy that walks you through the step-by-step process of doing this auditing of your student data system to find those students who have previously been enrolled. Some of them have already earned a degree. Some of them need to, take a varying number of credits to be able to re-enroll. Don't forget that you can get information from the National Student Clearinghouse about what has happened to your students after they've stopped enrolling at your institution. And some of that data may also be available in secure data files that you can access from My School Data. And you should be able to speak to your institutional research office about how to get access to that. But this can be a very good strategy to think about some of those comeback strategies for students who've been recently enrolled at your institution. As we've done this work over the last several years with colleges, one of the most persistent problems that we see is being able to find students who are not enrolled at your institution anymore. Phone numbers change, email addresses changed or are not checked, and certainly addresses change for a lot of students. We have partnered with a company called Alumni Finder in the past. There are a few various different organizations out there that can find people. They get people's phone numbers, email addresses, addresses. It's a relatively small cost to be able to load a file of people that you have in your system with some of their contact information, and then Alumni Finder sends you back a file with updated contact information about that person. Many colleges in Michigan have used Alumni Finder or another similar service and have been pretty satisfied with the quality of the data that comes back from them. So if you're thinking about doing a re-engagement strategy at your institution, be sure to take a look at these resources as well. The last thing that we wanted to talk about from the center is to really think about employer engagement. We know that of those students who chose not to enroll in college, many of those students chose to enter the labor market instead. And so in many cases, community colleges are competing with the labor market, competing with good jobs for enrollment. That's the choice that students are making. But in the fall of 2022, we conducted a survey of about 100,000 community college students in Michigan, and we found that 75% of community college students in Michigan specifically work for pay. And so we know that college is compatible with work. Students do it all the time. And we also know that when the governor announced the Futures for Frontliners program back in 2020, many colleges took the action of working directly with employers to help students enroll in college. This was a really unique program that was sort of connected a free tuition program to students who were working on the front lines. But one of the things that I think was really effective at our colleges is that colleges were very strategic about going out there to employers, going to break rooms, helping people apply for, complete the FAFSA and enroll in college, ensuring that students that work in college were compatible with each other because of work schedules and class schedules. But be really thinking about your employer partnerships as another engagement strategy to address some of these enrollment issues. The second thing that I want you to be thinking about is on April 17th, we will be launching a new feature on the Michigan Transfer Network that documents how colleges award credit for industry credentials. These would be credentials that students earn on the job. That may be in healthcare fields or in IT, manufacturing, skilled trades. We have populated a database with over 450 credentials that colleges will award credit for. When those data are available, when those equivalencies are available on the Michigan Transfer Network, this should be an extremely valuable resource for you to engage with employers, to communicate to them how students are already on the pathway to a degree. They've already completed some courses if they have those industry credentials. I've spoken with institutions who are already thinking about incorporating that into their program plan, where students can do a combination of industry credentials and college credits to be able to enroll and complete a certificate or an associate degree. We have provided a link to this information, and between now and April 17th, we're asking colleges to tell us on the Transfer Network how you award credit for industry credentials. And at that time, then we'll be able to share with you you'll be able to go out there and see how you can communicate that information to your employers, that this may be an important pathway for students to enroll and be able to complete a degree. Our contact information is here for Jenny Precious and I, and we've also included links to all of our information that we presented today, so that you'll be able to go back home, and all of this should be just in the slide deck that we posted on the MCCA website. With that, I would like to turn it over to our colleagues at the Office of 60 by 30 to talk about funding and financial aid in all of their programs. Sarah?
Thanks, Erica. Hello, everybody. So I'm Sarah Sherpicki. I'm the director of the Office of 60 by 30 in the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. I'm so glad to be here and so appreciative of MCCA for putting this together. So you can go ahead, slide. So this is the agenda of things I sort of thought I would bring to the table today. So one is I'm just going to go over some of the investments that the state is making in financial aid, most of which you're probably quite aware of, but I just want to put out there again as the context for this. Talk a little bit about some of the changes that were signed into law for Reconnect at the end of December. And then talk a little bit about student supports and marketing to adult students in particular, things we've learned from administering Reconnect. Talk a little bit about leveraging employer partners, and then to talk about some of our communications plans for this year that we really hope to engage our college partners with. So that's what we'll be doing. Oh, could you go to the next one? I accidentally put these in the wrong order. Thank you. So just as a quick update on sort of what applications are looking for. So Futures for Frontliners, Erica already touched on, we had over 120,000 applications. Futures for Frontliners, you probably all know, but that is a closed program. Nobody new can apply for Futures. So we already know the sort of complete universe of students who are eligible there. And so it's not really relevant as you're attracting new students to the school. Reconnect, though, we're hoping is sort of a permanent part of our state financial aid infrastructure. The governor's budget priorities for fiscal year 24 increased the budget a little bit, and also have suggested lowering the age to 21. So that's not final yet, obviously. But, I think shows the ongoing sort of support and enthusiasm for the program. But what is, really interesting to us here is the huge number of people who've applied and said, we're really interested. We want to come back to school or go to school for the first time. And then the number who've actually showed up on our campuses, right? So that's around 20%. And I think that's a number that together we can really work to improve. So we get some information about students or potential students when they apply for Reconnect. And I think we're really looking for how do we get more creative about taking those people and turning them into students on your campuses. I look at our role at 60 by 30 is to get them to your door. But that's a thing that can take partnership. All right, go back to the slide I put out of order, please. Thank you. We have 10 navigators who are funded by Reconnect. Those students are assigned, or those navigators are assigned to particular colleges. So many of you probably know the navigators who are assigned to your school. They reach out and are willing to help our sort of potential students who filled out their Reconnect applications with anything. They love to come to your campus. They love to work sort of as closely with you as you can manage to sort of support students. So they're trying to answer students' questions if they aren't sure even where to go. And usually they're trying to connect them directly to somebody on your campus to actually assist them with enrollment. And so you can also ask those new navigators to do things. So if you're doing a enrollment event and want one of our navigators there to be able to provide information about Reconnect for adult students, we're happy to be there. So if that's not a strong relationship for you already, then please reach out. Then the other thing is that we are going to continue, we sort of in fiscal year 22 had $6 million, which we granted out to all of the community and tribal colleges this year in order to address students' barriers. So the sort of rule about that funding was that students had to be in at least their second semester of Reconnect or Futures. And our hope for this funding was that it would help them to persist. And so we don't have data yet back about how successful that was, but I think it's going to be coming in shortly. We want to continue to advocate for additional funding for this. One thing I just want to mention about that is, wait, let me finish that thought. We want your stories about how that works. So there is a reporting process for that. that Ava Atari will oversees. And so someone at your campus is responsible for that. But the more you can tell us stories, the better we can collaboratively advocate. Now, that's not an enrollment strategy, but student persistence becomes a story that I believe really contributes to our enrollment strategies. So the more we can tell students about what we're going to do to help them succeed, the more likely they are to make the decision to enroll. So we'll be looking for your stories about that. Okay, next. Thank you. So the changes to Reconnect. I know that this is on a lot of folks' minds, especially in your sort of financial aid and admissions. And we are still, you know, it's been almost 2 months now since the bills passed. And so we still have a lot to work out in terms of like the exact procedures of how all of those changes, they were a lot of changes, are going to be administered. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that we're still in the middle of figuring a lot of that stuff out. We appreciate a lot of you have offered really helpful sort of reflections and thoughts to us about that. And by March 29th, we'll sort of be releasing a lot of the guidance that takes a strong partnership between our office and Treasury to produce that. The one thing that is there are two things that are especially relevant to this conversation though. And one is the changes to how funding can be applied for out of district students. So again, we can't get into the details yet of exactly how that is going to roll out. I wish we could, I'm sorry, but we do think that there will be a little bit of additional possibility for students who aren't in your district and maybe aren't in any district to now have more of their tuition funded by Reconnect. And so that's a change to really keep your eye on and to make sure that people sort of across your school, sort of not only the financial aid folks, but also admissions and people who are doing outreach and communications, anyone who's going to come into contact with potential students is aware of. The other one that I think is especially relevant here is the incentive payment for credit for prior learning. So the state is going to pay $80 a credit hour when you award a credit for a student through whatever your credit for prior learning sort of approaches are. The thing I just want to call out about that is that this is especially helpful for adult students. So I think in what we know about getting adult students sort of back to school and through it is that a lot of that is about increasing their momentum at the beginning. It is hard for an adult with a job and kids to sign up for 4 years of working and going to school, right? That is just a daunting task. And so the more we can do to help students like accumulate credits quickly and acknowledge them as adults and say, we know you have relevant work experience. We know you probably have relevant work experience. Let's take a good look at what type of credit we can give you for that work experience or prior learning that you've done. So it's a good time to sort of revisit. And I believe MCCA is going to be provides great guidance around this, but we can all be sort of revisiting that together for how to really maximize the use of credit for prior learning. Cool, thank you. Okay, so the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. This program is this, huge, you all know about it, but this big boost in need-based financial aid for Michigan students at Michigan colleges. This program is administered by the Treasury Department. And so if you've got questions about like packaging order and stuff, I cannot answer those. Those will be good questions for Treasury. But obviously this is a really critical tool. And, as Jamie was saying from MCAN, like we need to increase our FAFSA participation in order to increase the utilization of this. You can go to the next slide. So this is what the actual awards look like. So at a Michigan community college, a student can have up to almost $3,000 of their costs covered for up to 3 years. So, that's almost $10,000 of funding. And obviously these are need-based aids, but a lot of students are going to come in and be Pell eligible and eligible for other aid as well. And so there's a real, you know, this is just a huge advantage and something that we should kind of all be pushing. I am going to drop into the chat. So Treasury has created some like tools for marketing around this. And so I'm just dropping the link to that website into the chat. So there's a digital toolkit that you can pull up. It includes some social graphics and other info like messaging, brand, like, you know, what colors and fonts we're using so that you can create joint marketing that sort of markets your school and markets the availability of the Achievement Scholarship at the same time. You can go to the next slide, Erica, please. So just to give also kind of an overview of the eligibility for it, the estimates are that around 80%, while it's need-based, around 80% of Michigan families are expected to qualify. So it is not only the most low-income students, a lot of middle-income students are going to be eligible as well. You know, they have to have completed high school, completed their diploma or high school equivalency this year or later. So you know, for most, the biggest, you know, chunk of this funding is going to be going to traditional age students. I do think there's some opportunity in that high school equivalency. So if you have relationships with adult ed providers, if their students earn their equivalency in 2023 or later, it doesn't matter if they're 34 years old, they could also become eligible. And so those could be some relationships to sort of grow and build. I know that is not a huge pipeline of students, but students who, you know, are as valued to serve as any others. But obviously the big thing is just that students have to file their FAFSA. They do not have to do any other application in order to receive the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, but we have got to get them to complete their FAFSA. After they complete their FAFSA a few days later, excuse me, they need to create a My SSG account. So that's it. So I think it's really important to know it's simple. There's no other application, like just getting people to do their FAFSA is sort of the magic here. Go ahead. They get them to do their FAFSA. I knew that other presenters would be talking about the FAFSA completion, and I just wanted to say, like, yes, this is really the central tenet here of for the next few months, especially while high school students are still reachable at their high schools. They haven't sort of gone off into the world yet. Doing everything you can to help support FAFSA pushes in your community is the right thing to do. Go ahead. So I'm going to talk for just a minute about adult students. And what we have learned by administering Reconnect and Futures is one that adult students really, in addition to having a lot of logistical challenges, they also just wonder if they belong on college campuses. And now, you know, I would guess that many of your schools, a third of your students are now adult students. And so you know that adult students are figuring it out, but they don't. And so rethinking a lot of your sort of how you onboard, how you market, and how you reach students with some special messaging about the fact that you welcome and embrace adult learners is really worth doing. They hear those messages and they respond. Next slide. So there are a couple, these are really about, this slide is really about these sort of adult student offerings. And so, so one is in your marketing, like look at your marketing and see if you have marketing that you use that is targeted towards adult students. When you're reaching out to students who you know have come to you through Reconnect or Futures for Frontliners, are your messages to them like really upfront and acknowledging that they are adults and that you are going to help them as adults like figure out how to make education fit into their lives. So I think some of the lessons here, really, we've actually learned from like Wayne State with their, so it's a 4-year, but just as I think the lessons are just as relevant, they've created like a small adult learner lounge on campus with some extra space, where a lot of sort of informal advising is happening for adults. They found that adults need really different career advising services. They, maybe haven't updated resumes, or maybe they aren't using LinkedIn. So when you're providing those supports to adults, it needs to look a little bit different. And that having advisors who even specialize in adult students and who, are gonna start with helping adults overcome those challenges, excuse me, that really makes a difference. Obviously, childcare is a big issue, so helping them navigate that, even if you're not providing it directly, is really valuable. And highlighting for them the ways that, especially as we've evolved during the pandemic, to offer classes in different ways, so that they can take them online in the evening whenever they can fit them in. Sort of like emphasizing those things in your marketing really helps, and not only, and helps them feel that sense of belonging, that like you want them. Thank you. I just wanted to share sort of one story about leveraging your employer partners. So Peckham, not every employer is going to do what Peckham does with Lansing community colleges, but team members at Peckham who want to work to pursue additional post-secondary credentials get paid for 40 hours a week and only have to work 30 hours. So that gives them 10 additional hours in order to pursue, either go to classes or to study. Peckham does have some requirements for them. They need to stay for a year afterwards. They have to have been employed at Peckham for at least a year. And they have to enroll in a program or course that is sort of beneficial for their upward mobility. They also need to pursue kind of tuition and other support. But oftentimes at our schools, we've got employers, the employer relationships might be really managed on sort of the non-credit side. And this is just another opportunity to start like linking these sides, the credit bearing and the non-credit sides of the school together, and reaching out to your partners who we at Leo, we hear from employers all the time. They are some of our key stakeholders about how they need to upskill their employees. Well, here's a path for them to upskill is by working in deeper partnership with you. So providing a model, and maybe it doesn't need to be this 30-40, that might be too generous for many, but there are opportunities to reach out to your employer partners and ask them sort of what they can bring to the table to help their adult students go back to school. So we know many of you have deep partnerships. This is just an area, grow them for enrollment as well. Go ahead. Okay, lastly, and Erica, do you need me to pause for questions? No, I can take us to like 2 minutes before noon. Okay, great. I'm going to talk a little bit about something we're planning in terms of marketing. This QR code, if you want to pull it up before I get into the details, is a way to sort of share with us your information if you're interested in participating in what I'm about to describe. So we at the state, have a marketing budget for Reconnect. What we're developing for this summer is an effort to really leverage our marketing dollars to work more in your local markets. So, all right, let's go to the next slide. So we can always come back to that too. So what we want to do is, as I said, direct more of our dollars to sort of the local or regional media markets, and highlight each of the schools in those media markets when we're doing that push. So what it might look like is that a particular week in July, we are going to be in Southeast Michigan, and we want all those schools in Southeast Michigan to tell us about what they do to support adult students, their general marketing materials, like why should people come to their school, and that we'll be doing a sort of collaborative and coordinated push. We might want to be planning sort of on-campus enrollment events at the same time. Like, so we need to work out these details in partnership with you all. But we're excited to start planning this, and we hope that we are making that even stronger push. Like, our focus in the first year of Reconnect was really on just like, know about Reconnect, know that it exists. Now we're trying to get a little bit more targeted at like, use Reconnect to enroll in one of these schools. Like, let's increase the momentum for students. And as I said, hopefully we're increasing that conversion rate. And I think that's it. So if you want to go back, yes. So this is just to sign up for our newsletter, to stay in touch on all of our stuff. If you missed the QR code, you can email the email that is in the very last slide that's coming up here, 60by30@michigan.gov. You can email us there about literally any of the things that we said. But, you know, just say if you're the communications person who wants to work with us on that communications push, we'd love to hear from you. I hope that we have all 31 community and tribal colleges participating in that, and are excited to sort of put that to good effort or good effect. That's it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. We just are running right up against noon. I really want to extend my thanks to my colleagues at MCCA who joined us today, to the Michigan College Access Network for all of their great resources, and for the team at the Office of 60 by 30 for their great work. As I mentioned earlier, we will email you all, but these slides are also posted on the MCCA website. And they are available to use on your campus as well. Please reach out to us. We are happy to host another one of these big workshops in a few months, if that would be helpful to you with updated information. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and especially I know for many of you on a day when you're juggling lots of stuff happening on your campus and at your home as well. So thank you so much, and we will look forward to seeing you next